All right, so today you're asking about Paticca Samuppada. Do you have any particular questions for us to start, or shall we start at the beginning?
Let me see. No, I mean, it seems to start at contact, but wherever you feel appropriate to begin with. Um,
Okay, well, let's get to the point of how do we get contact? What is it that contacts us? Is it one of the things that come out of the sixth sense base? Is it sensory input that contacts us? The answer to that is no, not the raw stuff, the processed.
the consciousness.
Okay, so um, perhaps the way of even thinking about it is the fresh produce. Well, first let's go to the boxed food in a grocery store. The food that's in a box, let's say Kraft noodles, right? Those noodles are food, right?
Right.
But they've been highly processed, right? That you don't find noodle trees or noodle bushes. Noodles are processed food. Okay. Now let's go to the groceries. The fresh produce, the vegetables. Would are That's also food? Would you say that it's also been processed?
In a way.
In a way, absolutely. Without that processing, it wouldn't be in your hand.
Yeah, precisely.
There was all kinds of processors that got that from that bush, wherever it was, a tomato plant way out there in the field that you don't know, perhaps in a foreign country, and a whole lot of hands and a whole lot of processes, including that it was picked out among other tomatoes selectively to be put on that shelf. Okay, so that it goes through a lot of process. So by the time you get it, by the time that fruit contacts you, or by the time those noodles contact you, they have been processed. We want to also look at the way that the mind works like that also, is that things get processed. It's not the raw input that contacts us, but it's processed goods. What is it processed with, and what is the process? The process is called Namarupa, and it is the process of turning the physical object that the eye sees into a mental image that contacts us. Okay, and the mental image that contacts us is processed with perception, and it's processed using ingredients from the past, so that every present moment is actually tainted with the past. We can either do that wisely or we can do that ignorantly.
Hmm.
Mostly we do it ignorantly. An example of it is that you see someone in a uniform, and because you recognize the uniform, you already decide who that person is based upon the uniform that they're in. This is just an example, but we do it all the time. So if you see someone dressed in a local police uniform, then you think he's police. If you see someone dressed in an SS costume, you wonder what that is, but if in 1944 it would have been an SS officer, now it's more than likely either a Halloween costume or he's doing a part in a movie.
Hmm.
You see a nun's habit, and you recognize that that must be a nun in that habit, right? This is the way that it goes, but that's not always the case. That we can't judge always a book by its cover. So what we're really saying is that what contacts us is something that we perceive through perception rather than what it actually is. And we could go so far as to then say that the definition of dukkha is that the closer what we perceive or what contacts us is to reality, then the less likely there is to be dukkha there, and that the further our perceptions or the internal representation is that contacts us, the further that is from the actual reality of the situation, then the more likely there is to be dukkha. Does that make sense to you? In
When
other
you
words, when you're spot on, there's less dukkha than if you're sorely mistaken.
and when you say actual reality, you're referring to what
This
exactly?
present moment, what's happening around you, your universe,
Okay.
your perceivable universe in this moment.
So does that also include the perception that's incorrect? And
Well, if you perceive something incorrectly,
but
then that's dukkha
knowing
or
it's
subject to
incorrect, like
uh,
being aware this is a perception that's incorrect, as opposed to absorbed in that perception is right. I guess I'm just trying to
this is
create
what
that.
investigation is all about. The
Okay.
whole quality then of investigation is to pay more and more attention to actually what's happening and paying less and less attention to what it meant in the past
Okay.
and more of what it means right now.
Yeah. I guess what I mean is like when a perception comes up that's wrong, it's recognized, this is an incorrect perception, and then that takes you closer to what reality actually is, correct?
Precisely so.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we can use that in the process of our, let us call it our meditation, that we're sitting and we have a thought of something terrible happened last month and that I did it. I made a huge mistake. And when I make that huge mistake, and now I'm thinking about that huge mistake, the feelings of guilt, remorse, sadness, and those kind of feelings would occur. Now, those feelings may have been appropriate right then when I did it, but this is a month later,
Mm.
right? A month ago, which means that now I'm not the same person. So, the right kind of thought now, a new investigation for this present moment, is to recognize, wait a minute, that was long ago. It's not happening in this present moment. That I am coloring this present moment and feeling about this present moment to something that was uh, actually from the past. So my present moment is being colored by the past. And when I recognize that, I can say, wait a minute, I don't have to think about that right now. I could be here now. That was in the past. That was not me. I don't do that kind of thing anymore. I'm not doing it now. There's no reason to feel bad now because I'm not doing it now. Okay, so this is a way of understanding what actually contacts us is not the reality of the moment unless we are wise. If we are wise, then we allow very little perception and very little, let us say, um, trying to make sense out of something. And often, when we're trying to make sense out of something, that means that we're trying to make sense out of it in a critical way. To where there's another way of making sense out of it, and that is a more of a nurturing way. In other words, the nurturing is not so much interested in the details and the frills, to where critical thinking is. And that's why critical thinking often is associated with dukkha, to where nurturing thought is much more wholesome. So, now that we're understanding that the kind of thoughts and perceptions that we have that tinges, and because that tinge theirs, and we continue to do that, those thoughts and perceptions will bend the mind or lean the mind into a habit pattern. And if we can interrupt that habit pattern and change the way that we perceive things, then we can change those habits. And that we do that at that point of contact. When something contacts us, we can say, instead of having it contact us, giving rise to feelings ignorantly, we can say at that point of contact, wait a minute, I have a choice here. I can feel the way that I want to. And one of the things that I can do is to go back and reevaluate, take another look, and reevaluate the thing. And then I can do that again. But if I ignorantly allow that contact, then the feelings arise, and those feelings arise are either feelings of confusion, feelings of wanting to get rid of it, not liking it, or wanting to like it. And so feelings arise at that point of contact. That's why Paticca Samuppada, in fact, what we've been talking about is the Vinaya, the consciousness, the Sanya, or the Namarupa of perception, and the Sankara together, giving rise to Salayatana, which is our internal representation. And that internal representation may not be actually the real thing. It may be our own interpretation, but that's what contacts us, is our own internal realization. And in fact, that's a funny word, realization, because we really don't realize anything, we mentalize something. If I actually realized that that was a tree, that would mean that I would have a tree growing. I would realize a tree, I would grow one right out of the top of my head. No, that so we don't realize things, we mentalize it, or that we bring it into the reality of the internal world. This is what we call salayatana. And the word in Pali, atana, is actually the senses. So the salayatana is the internal senses of what we make of through our perceptions and our past, sankara, is what actually impacts us. Once
Okay.
something impacts us, if we are wise, we have a choice about how we're going to feel about it. If we are ignorant, in other words, at that point in sati, if we are wise to it, then we can choose. But mostly, the contact will cause a feeling to arise, and the feeling that arises is the one that we're familiar with, or the one that we already have the habit of. And so, if uh, let us say, if I was a child and I received some bad information in a letter or mail, then because of that, and I remember that and pour over it and whatnot, then when that child gets older, when he opens a mail, he will begin to feel bad. And sometimes he knows that it might be a bill from the electric company, and so he doesn't want to see it. He knows I'm going to feel bad when I open that mail, and so he doesn't want to open mail anymore.
Okay.
And so it causes all kinds of trouble because he's avoiding something, because what he's really avoiding is how he feels. He could have opened that mail, saw that this was the water bill or the electric bill, paid the electric bill because he owes the money, and he could have felt good the whole time.
Okay.
Okay?
One.
So this is how we feel ignorantly, is that we like things, we don't like things, or we don't not sure whether we like it or not. This is Vedana.
Mm,
So far, so good. So we've covered Vinaya, Sanya or Namarupa, Sankara, and we can say just offhand with that Sankara, the basis of that stuff was in ignorance, that we were ignorant when we were children, and that's a lot of the Sankara is not wise, it's false information. So we are processing with bad information, and that's what helps give us bad mentalizations or bad realizations, which then give us bad feelings.
okay, I'm just pulling up the wheel of origination, so I'm following along with you here, so I can just sort of see and not have to visualize it. So let's see.
What is your reference? Are you looking in Wikipedia? Are you looking in a sutta? Are you
I can
looking at
share it.
somebody? Huh?
It
No, you don't have to share it. I don't. I just want to know the source of it.
um, it's a chart on Kunine heart. It's hard to say, but it's going through each of the points that you say you're discussing. It's just the words. It starts at Avijja, moves into Sankara, moves into Vinaya, moves into
Vinya.
Namarupa. Vinya moves into Namarupa, then Salayatana, then Contact, and Vedana.
Hmm.
Um, and I just wanted to see that as it, and see where if there's any sort of confusion. I guess the contact point, the distinction between that and the six senses, I'm not certain about. Sort of like it feels like everything is contacting simultaneously.
Let us not say simultaneously, but let's say in rapid order.
Okay.
And that there is various degrees. Some things hit us harder than others. That in fact, some things hardly impact us at all, and yet still manage how we're feeling. An example of that would be a low grade anxiety that actually modifies our thoughts and our feelings because we're not aware of it.
Mm.
But if we are sitting in meditation and watching what's going on, we in fact may be more likely to become aware of that low grade agitation, anxiety, and therefore, because of that wisdom, now we can deal with it. So
Okay.
we could say that when things are below the threshold, or we call it subconscious, below the conscious level, then that would be for sure ignorance. And we do a lot of stuff ignorantly. But if we keep going over and over things and looking at it and investigating, we begin to see more clearly what's really going on.
Okay.
And so now we're beginning to operate with a whole lot less ignorance and a whole lot less past, and operating much more in the present moment.
Okay. And so, how does ignorance um, lead to sankara?
Well, Sankara is merely the buildup of stuff.
Okay.
And
Maybe I
if
don't.
we ignorantly build up stuff, then there's going to be ignorance in that building up.
So
You
the
have seen, you possibly have seen brickwork that was done by a very, very skilled craftsman. And then you
yes,
have
yeah.
seen brickwork done by somebody who's it's their first time that they put up brickwork. Right? And it's going to be sloppy. Some bricks are not going to be flat. Some are going to be at an angle. Maybe the wall is tilted. All kinds of different possibilities for the brickwork to not be good. Okay, so this is why we need to practice over and over and over again to keep looking at things over and over and over again, so that we can begin to see things more straight, more clearly. Because that first time that we did it, there was a lot of ignorance. The skilled uh, bricklayer now knows more about what's to do. But when we were born as children, and we started laying bricks. We started remembering things when we didn't have a clue about what was going on. Okay. One example that I know of from the time that we were studying in psychology is that a patient in um, it was in a facility. Let us call it a nut house. But she was in this facility, and that they found her with very, very severe burns on her body. Now, she had been there for a long time, but what had happened was is that it was during the summertime, and that as a child, this was in the days of radiators. And the severe burns came because she was hiding behind the radiator out of fear. But she was in the room alone and she had a panic attack. And when she was in a panic attack, she hid behind a radiator in the summertime when she was a kid. And so she'd hide behind the radiator. And this time she hid behind the radiator, and the radiator was on because it was wintertime, right? But she got in the habit of hiding behind the radiator because she felt some security there when she was a child, and she did not have the knowledge that that radiator is dangerous. You can't hide behind it all the time. Okay, that's a very severe example, but we do that all the time in our own lives. Is we do something, it doesn't hurt, we continue to do it, and later it hurts
Mm-hmm.
because the circumstances or conditions had changed. And so we started that habit out of ignorance. We did not know the potential possible danger. This is, in fact, what happens as we grow up, even that the Buddha talks about it like this, that we can only see the gratitude, we can only see the, not the gratitude, let us say, we can only see the pleasure in something, or we can only see the gratification. That's the word I'm looking for. We can only see the gratification, but we can't see the danger. An example of that would be the guy who is fat and he eats donuts. He loves donuts. He gets great gratification from eating donuts. And then he goes to the doctor, and the doctor says, wait a minute, there's something dangerous going on here. You've got high blood pressure, this, that, and the other thing. And he talks with the doctor, and the doctor figures out that, oh, this guy is addicted to donuts. And so now the doctor has to convince this fat guy that donuts are dangerous for you. Once the man really understands that donuts are dangerous, now he can find an escape for dangerous donuts. How can he escape them? By when he goes to the grocery store, he doesn't buy them. If he finds them in the refrigerator, he'll throw them out. He makes sure that the donuts are not going to be there for him because he sees them now as dangerous. Okay? This is how ignorance operates, is that we cannot see the danger. Once we can see the danger, then we can find the escape. So as you begin to see the danger in unwholesome thoughts, you'll begin to plot your escape out of unwholesome thoughts into wholesome thoughts. Once you see that that it's dangerous to have feelings of fear, anger, anxiety, that they're dangerous, then you can plot your escape from those feelings.
Mm.
Okay, so that's the answer to your question about ignorance.
Okay.
Why does ignorance mess up everything? It's because when we're children, we cannot see the danger in things, and guess what? Even as adults, we cannot see the danger.
Okay. So this is, you're describing, it unfolds into sankhara, and my understanding of that isn't very clear. I understand that it leads to these unwholesome states of mind. And is that what sankhara is?
You could easily understand it just in the beginning. To understand it is your sum total of your past.
Just like a karma, like the accumulation
That's
of
it.
action.
It's the accumulation of all the results of your past actions.
Okay. And so on the opposite hand, as ignorance moves towards right view, as you're gaining wisdom, then is it you're reducing the, because it doesn't seem like it's a reduction of karma. It seems like it's a transition of karma to being more skillful.
Precisely so.
Okay.
Bhikkhu Buddhadasa actually has a long article that was published in Tricycle magazine that comes out of a book that was published in 2017 that has to do with the heartwood of the bo tree, but that's not the right title. But it's a book that that Santikaro has written in more recent times about Bhikkhu Buddhadasa.
Okay.
And so this is where he's talking about it. that that this sankhara is based basically just our own memory systems, and everything that happens and it gets built up. So in this article, uh, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa talks about it the way that you did, in the sense of that it's our karma, and that the name of the article is "The Choice Is Yours." You can either have a choice, or if you don't make a choice, if you don't wake up and make some choices, then you are doomed to live in that old karma, repetitive samsara. So he talks about it like that. That's, in fact, you could say, is our destiny.
Mm.
And our destiny is based upon that we keep operating in the same old way that we have been, ignorantly. We have not yet woken up to the danger. And so that ignorance is our destiny. But if we do wake up to the danger, now we can make a choice. And that choice is always to escape that old karma. Let's make a change here. I don't have to feel scared. I can feel secure. I don't have to feel frustrated. I can feel relaxed. I don't have to think about that guy that took that money from me. I can forget all about it.
Is this okay? Uh, this ignorance is leading to this sankhara, but it's ignorance of what? Of the cause of this suffering?
Okay.
Is that
Yes,
this is
that's
what
one of the
the
things we can be ignorant
just
of, is how did this suffering get caused? Also, we can be ignorant of the extent of the suffering. Also, we can be ignorant of how to get out of this suffering. So there's all kinds of things that we uh, can be
okay?
ignorant about, and that we spend our whole lives ignorantly accumulating information, some of which is tinged with uh, uh, with it with incorrect data, and also it's tinged with what you could call proliferations.
Okay.
Now, proliferations, we could go so far as to say proliferations are in fact inductive logic that is misunderstood or wrong. In other words, a person, let us say an alien comes to a certain place in the world and sees a whole lot of people. And everybody he sees is a man. And he recognizes man after man after man after man, and that's all he sees. And so he induces, therefore, there must not be any women. Right? And more than likely, that alien has not gone into the houses to find out that the women are in the house and they don't go out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so that would be a mistake or an ignorance out of inductive logic. That because everything I see is a man, therefore there are no women, there are only men. And that's because we haven't gotten enough information. This is actually the problem with statistics. That's the problem with polls. If they got a really, really good sample, then it's going to be an accurate poll. The question is, how in the world can they get a good sample? They're really ignorant about that. So they say, well, we'll put our polls on the internet, and now only people who go to that particular website will take that poll. Or if we call only telephone numbers, but wait a minute, you can't call a cell phone, you can only call landlines. Well, a lot of people only have cell phones, and so you miss an entire audience. Okay, so
Yep.
this is the way that polls operate ignorantly, giving ignorant results.
Yeah. It's sort of like I don't see any arhats. I don't see any wise beings who've transcended suffering. I only see everyone's suffering. Therefore, there is no such thing as an escape. This
Mm-hmm.
is essentially where I came out of. Um, it's like, how could that be possible?
Exactly. But that's an inductive logic that may not be true.
Yep.
That in fact I've had just the opposite experience because I made sure that I went out looking for them. That you're just standing in the United States saying, I don't see any arhats around here, therefore there must not be any arhats. And my position was, well, here I am in North or South Carolina, and I don't see any
Yeah.
arhats. I'm going to go look for them where they are.
I mean, that's what I decided to do as well. Except I can't leave, so I've had to kind of navigate the interwebs, just um, seeing if anyone has more wisdom than me and can solve this problem. Um, okay, this makes sense. And Sankara, Sankara then leads to Vinya. Um,
Sankara leads to Vinaya. Okay, it does eventually, yes. In
okay.
fact, it's very, very close. It's within a mind moment. All that stuff happens really quick.
Yeah, the goal is to see these as they're. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's to see the process of paticca samuppada as it's happening, and
Precisely.
from that acquire wisdom. Okay.
Exactly. That's in fact the whole idea. Why would the Buddha even teach this? The answer is because he could see this stuff finally, that he was no longer ignorant, and now that he is pointing it out to us, it's for us to see it. Once we can see this stuff, now we know how to begin to manage it. And eventually, the better at managing it we are. This is a very important quality about the way that the 10 fetters are structured. That the first 3 fetters are to be abandoned by seeing. And that's why the whole path is called um, knowledge and deliverance, Arpanya Vimutti, in the sense that we don't have the deliverance or the freedom until we can plot the escape. And we cannot plot the escape until we can see the danger clearly. And so the
Yeah.
whole first process is to be able to wake up and see these dangers. Once we can see the dangers, now we can plot the escape. And the first 3 fetters is all about seeing things clearly. And so the first fetter is personality view. Who am I? The answer to that is a moving target as best. Not only is it that it's a moving target, but it's also. Um, have you ever been to the carnival, the sideshows at the carnival, and seen cork guns or BB guns or whatever like that, trying to knock over targets? And not only are they moving around, but some of them pop up and come down, and they're up
Yep.
and they're down. Well, you know when it's down that it's going to pop up, and then you can shoot it when it pops up, it'll pop back down. The self is kind of like that, except not only is the self then a moving target, like a row of ducks going along like that, but they're popping up and down also. Sometimes there's a self, sometimes there's not. And when there's a self, it's almost always associated with dukkha. How does the self actually pop up? It pops up based upon conditions or causes. So when some event happens that causes us to have a salayatana or to make a mental image or to realize something on the inside, that contacts us. That contact gives rise to feelings. The feelings of liking ignorantly, while we're still ignorant and all we do is like it, then we make the connection, I like it, therefore I want it. If we I have the feeling of I don't like it, or it's an unpleasant feeling, then we have the tendency to go into trying to get rid of it.
Hmm.
So wanting it brings it to us, and not liking it, we have the feeling of wanting to push it away, right? This wanting to bring it to us or wanting to push it away is called tanha in the Pali. And what that means in English, we could use the simple word of want. I want it, I don't want it. I like it, I want it is the sequence. Vedana, I like it, goes to want it. The wanting then goes to from just and by the way, the going towards it to bring in is also the same thing that we would call in English grasping. And as I'm grasping, as I want that object, then I'll seize hold of it, and that's what we call clinging or upadana.
Okay.
Okay, that's also the same thing then as going from the sequence I like it, I want it, into the judgment of it must be good. Or if I don't like it, then that means that I want to get rid of it. I don't want it, and therefore it must be bad. These are all ignorant things. Just because I like it doesn't mean that I want it. And just because I want it doesn't mean that it must be good. I may be wanting something ignorantly that's bad for me.
Okay. So upadana, the distinction between upadana and tanha is it's just like a feeling that it's
Tanha is leaning and upadana is falling over.
okay. Is there really a sharp distinction, or is it just kind of like a progression
It's a
of
progression, exactly.
yeah, okay.
That in fact there is already clinging built into the grasping.
Yeah. I've never been certain of where one starts and the other ends, or it just seems kind of
They
like a
don't,
spectrum.
it's a spectrum precisely, but this whole thing is a spectrum. One thing leading into the other,
Mm, yes, yeah. Um,
one process after another. So one conditions the next one to the next one. Now, once we get to this point of actually clinging to some object, mental or otherwise, this upadana is now in the Buddhist system leads to four modes of clinging. That's a very interesting thing. Four modes of clinging, because that also understands that these four modes of clinging also will take us into the four woeful states. And they also have direct relationship to more modern teachings that the Buddha didn't talk about. He used the term underlying tendencies, but the word underlying tendencies in the suttas is not a particular fixed list of four, but it's just the general things. But when we look at it in more scientific terms, we can see that that these four modes of clinging are actually the four scientific modes of instinct.
mm,
So the clinging to the self is the self-preservation instinct. Clinging to sensuality, sensual desires, and materialism is the procreation instinct. Clinging to rites, rules, rituals, and the way things that should be done in order to get along, that's the nesting instinct. And our attachments are clinging to uh, views, the way things are, identifications, and all of that kind of stuff is marking our territorial boundaries or the territorial instinct. In other words, I define who I am by what I believe. I define who I am by the territory that I live in. Therefore, the territory that I live in is bounded by the borders of France. Therefore, I must be French because I'm within those borders. That defines who I am. Okay, this
Okay.
is the territorial instinct. So one of the territorial instincts that we can have as a view is Democrats are good and Republicans are not. Or the other way around is that Democrats and Republicans are bad and I'm independent, right? These are identifications, and this comes out of the old territorial instinct, and that territorial instinct is very, very strong, and it is directly related to the the nesting instinct in the sense of this is my group, this is my nest, this is my little place, this is where I'm safe at night, and everything else is not. So therefore, the nest becomes part of the boundary of the territorial boundary. And
Hmm.
anything that does not belong in the nest is an outsider. They're out of the territory. This gives rise then to racism, tribalism, otherisms, sexism, uh, bigotry, and all of those kind of things. But it also has to do with identification and attachments to organizations, governments, patriotism, and all of that kind of stuff. And it always has that critical division of us against them, or this is my way and theirs is the highway. Where's the highway lead? Out of the territory, surprisingly enough. Haha. Go away. Don't be here. And so this is how the Buddha is talking about um, attachments to views, a thicket of views, an interpretation of views, all kinds of things, is to be dropped. That we begin to drop our territorial instincts, those instincts that arose naturally as instinctual things, also arose ignorantly because we weren't watching what was going on. And so ignorant feelings for the adult can arise of, I don't know who he is, but he's not the right color because all the people I know are of this particular color and he doesn't have that color. Or all the people I know dress in this way and he doesn't dress this way, he dresses in another way. Therefore, he is outside. He's an outsider. He's another person. He's dangerous, in fact. And this leads back to something else that we need to go back to, and that is the issue of Vedana for just a moment. And that is there's a third kind of feeling. And that third kind of feeling in the Pali is known as dukkha, asukha Vedana, which means that it's not either pleasant nor unwanted. That in fact, but it is not a neutral feeling because a neutral feeling wouldn't even contact us or impact us. So, because something impacted us, a feeling arises, but sometimes we don't know how to feel about it. We don't know whether it's a something that we should like or not. This is what gives rise to doubt,
Okay.
ignorantly doubt. Wisely, it gives rise to investigation, to curiosity. With wisdom, Asukha Eduka Vedana will say, what's this? What's going on with this? But normally, the thing when it comes up of they don't know what it is, they say, "Oh no, I don't know what that is. It must be bad."
Yeah.
This is our instinct to the territory. It comes from outside. We don't quite know what it is. Let's automatically assume it's bad, without doing a thorough investigation to find out really what is there. So, back then, so you can see how this confusion feeling actually does bring up the territorial instinct quite easily. So, we have four modes of clinging. One is clinging to the identification of self. The second one is clinging to identification of material goods, pleasure seeking objects, furniture to sit on, carpet to walk on, socks and shoes to have, that kind of stuff. our material goods. So we have this whole idea of materiality. That it, in fact, in the really, really old days, I remember seeing cartoon of let's say a Neanderthal kind of guy dressed in a bearskin with a club in one hand and a hank of hair of a woman in his left hand, and he's dragging her into the cave. That shows absolute ownership or domination, and you can see where the actual procreation instinct is really all about ownership. She's my girl. I own her. hmm So, this whole idea of ownership and control of an object, whether it's a pocket knife or a set of keys or whatever it is, we attach to this as if it was mine. And in fact, we use our material objects to protect the self, that we use it for self preservation. This is why people will carry a weapon, a material object that is supposed to give them safety and security. Why? Because they don't have safety and security built in. They've got danger built in. Why is the danger there? It's because they saw things ignorantly. Okay, so now we have these four modes of clinging. We have self-preservation instinct as a clinging to the self. We have materialism and sensual objects that is part of the procreation instinct. We have the nesting instinct, which gives rise to all of our rites, rules, rituals, ways to fit in, and this is the place where we find most of the discursive thought. Also, the discursive thought will be in, but not so much in our attachment to views. Normally, the thinking is can get very intricate. In other words, we can get into long dissertations about why this political party is better than that political party. But basically, it comes down to the feeling of I like it, therefore I want it, and I don't like that one, therefore I want to get rid of that one. Okay, so this is how our views, but the one that's so complicated is the nesting instinct, because this is where we ignorantly as children learn to follow the rules learn to go along to get along. And so we create for ourselves a map or a framework of how things should be when we're children, and we build that map up ignorantly, that we could go so far as to say this is how we're building that sankara, as we're building it through this nesting instinct, or we're building it because we're automatically instinctually attracted to and cling to rites, rules, and rituals, or let us say the rules of the nest, the house rules. Every house has house rules. Okay, why do we have house rules? That's coming out of the nesting instinct. The idea is that the nest is safe, but someone in charge of the nest. And so if one of the members of the nest is misbehaving himself, he can get thrown out of the nest. But getting thrown out of the nest is dangerous. The predators are out there. If I stay in the nest, I'll be safe. If I'm thrown out of society, if I'm thrown out of the nest, then things are dangerous. Okay. And for that reason, because they're dangerous, that means it's still tied back to the self-preservation instinct. So we selfishly then start to take up a set of rules. This is how it should be. This is how it should not be. I should do this. Well, now what we do when we're adults is we will often rehearse some of these rules that we have learned. Like, you should do this. You should do that. One student was telling me that he was watching YouTube videos, and while he was watching YouTube videos, he was telling himself, you should be meditating. You ought to be meditating. Instead of while he's watching the video, he could immediately begin to start meditating right then. He could take a deep breath and smile and relax and say, okay, I'm finding something wholesome in this video. But no, he goes into unwholesome thoughts, and while he's having unwholesome thoughts, oh, I should not be watching this video, I should be meditating. Number one, he's not meditating, and two, now he's not watching the video, he's having unwholesome thoughts instead. What is the unwholesome thought? You should go do this. And the internal child inside is saying, no, I don't want to do that. I want to watch the video. No, you go do this. And so you can see these dialogues coming up, each one of them coming out of one of these four modes of clinging.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, so these four modes of clinging, then when we cling, we are now being reborn into a woeful state. One of the possible woeful states that we can be born into is hell. Hell is a woeful state. Why is hell a woeful state? It's because we'll do anything we can to get out of it. We really don't like it, but we can't. So when people get angry, they get hot. When people are full of anxiety or even have a little bit of anxiety, this is this is heat, and we don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
But we're trapped in it. We're actually reborn. This is actually the birth of the self now is fully born, even though it only took about a half a second or so from the time that we saw an object to now we're in hell about it. For instance, it's possible that you can see somebody carrying a Confederate flag, and within a half a second you can be in hell. I don't like those Confederate flags. Oh, he's a communist. No, he's not a communist. He's a slave driver, and you can hear all of that stuff come up just because we saw something and we connected with all of the past.
This is my understanding of the 6 realms of existence. Is that applied to this specifically?
Yes. These 4 woeful states then correspond to the 4 modes of clinging.
Oh, the 4 unwoeful. I'm not sure about. I don't know those 4 unwoeful states.
Okay, we've already covered one of the 4 woeful states, hell. The second woeful state is called the hungry ghost, or in Pali, the Pitta. What is a hungry ghost? It's someone who wants something and wants something and wants something but can't have it. So the Pitta is a woeful state of wanting something you have that you don't have. Okay. It's a state of desire. It comes basically from I see something, I like it, and therefore I like it, I want it, but I can't have it.
Yes, yeah. I know what that is, yeah.
All right. So that's the Pitta. The next one is the animal, the woeful state of an animal. What is an animal? We're not talking about wild animals here. We're talking about domesticated animals. Why? Because you as a child became a domesticated animal.
Mm-hmm.
How were you domesticated? Well, they gave you what you wanted when you behaved the way that they wanted you to. Which means that the animal does what it's told to do, whether it gets what it wants or not.
Mm-hmm.
So, you were promised things. This is where the law of karma comes in. The law of karma really comes into this place of doing what we're told to do. That in fact it fits quite well with the nesting instinct or the herding instinct. We can see the animal connection immediately, right? Doing what you're told to do. And guess what? You've got a great big long set of rules of what you should do built right in. How is it built in? You collected those things ignorantly as memories. You should do this, you should do that. You should live this way. You should wear that shirt today. You should go to work today. You should stay home today. All of that kind of stuff that's in there with all of these rules. And we follow them ignorantly, like a dumb animal. And so one of the stories I have about it is when I was in India, I saw a donkey with a big pole mounted on his back, and the other end of the pole went to a stone that turned around upon another giant stone. And so as the donkey walked around in this 30-foot circle, he was pulling the stone around, grinding stuff, and so the owner was putting sugar cane in there. and sugarcane juice was coming out of the bottom, and he could collect it in a glass. And he would sell that sugarcane juice for 10 rupees. How much of that sugarcane juice does the donkey get?
None. Yeah.
None of it. He's going along to get along. He's doing what he's told to do. He's somehow hoping to get a reward, and he never gets it.
Mm-hmm.
Our whole society is built this way. Our whole society is built that way. Learn your ABCs. Why should I learn ABCs? So you can read. Well, why should I want to read? It's because you can't get a job if you can't read. Why should I want a job? You won't eat if you don't read. Right? And so all of this is layered and layered and layered upon us as children, and we're too dumb as kids to recognize that we're being lied to. We're being lied to. We're being coerced into doing things that adults want us to do. What do the adults want us to do? They want us to do what they had to do when they were kids. And so the way that a parent is raised is the way he's going to raise his kids by and large. And so if a child is raised with violence in the home, then there's going to be violence in the home when he's an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that ignorance, that we begin to pick up whatever is there, whether there's ignorance built into it or not. But with the teachings of the Buddha, now we can begin to see with wisdom, hey, I don't have to do things just because I'm told to do it. I have the choice of enjoying it also. I don't merely have to do it because I'm told to do it, hoping for a reward later. I can get all the reward I need out of it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so this is how wisdom will help us come out of these woeful states. Now, we've touched 3 of them. The 4th one is a little complicated because many people think that it's a heavenly world. It's the Titans or the Asuras. But really what we're talking about is not heavenly worlds, but magical creatures, magical warriors.
Mm.
And like the Titans are magical warriors in the Greek system. In fact, I think that the Titans and the Asuras come from the same mentality place. And so it would be natural for people to have these ideas of these heavenly creatures that are all dressed up for battle, but don't go to battle. All dressed up and no place to go. The child who knows his part, and when it's time to walk out on stage, instead of just going out and performing and having a joy, he has stage fright. Fear. This is the Asura, the one who is afraid to go into battle. Possibly the most humorous example of that was McClellan. Have you ever heard of McClellan? McClellan was the general who got Lincoln's army ready to go into battle for the Civil War. And McClellan was really excellent at training. He really got that army in top-notch shape. But as soon as Lincoln wanted him to go to battle again, he said, well, wait a minute, we need this and we need that. And when he got this and he got that, then he says, well, we need this too. And finally he got the army in such really brilliant shape, but he still wouldn't let him go to battle. Finally, he was replaced. And Lincoln got a new general, Grant. And Grant took that first-class, very highly trained, very sophisticated army, took it up through Ohio, put it on the river, came down the Vicksburgs on the Mississippi, and went from Vicksburgs all the way to Savannah and just destroyed the South. Just cut it in half with that first-class crack army that he inherited from McClellan. Why wouldn't McClellan do that? Because he was stuck in that state of fear. He's not ready yet. He's not ready yet. He's not ready yet.
Okay, that makes sense.
And this is one of those kinds of clinging that we have. It's one of the 4 modes of clinging that gives rise to fear. And when we're fearful, that's that whole point of, I'm not ready for this. That's what fear really is I can't handle this. Well, guess what? With wisdom, you can recognize you can handle anything. You can even handle getting shot. You can handle dying. You can handle anything. And through wisdom, through inductive logic, you recognize I can handle these little things, then I can handle the big ones when they come by too. And so we do not have to get stuck in this state of Asura who is all ready for battle and is afraid to go to battle. Still not ready, still not ready.
Yep.
These are the four modes of clinging: fear, anger, going along to get along and not enjoying what we're doing, and wanting things that we don't have. These are the four modes of clinging that are the four woeful states that we get ourselves into. Guess what? Now that you know that, anytime that you recognize that you've gotten yourself into one of those states, you can say, hey, I don't have to do this. I can come out of this thought process. I can take a deep breath and start giving myself some wholesome thoughts instead.
Yeah, the main issue is that what arises in the becoming appears as if it's me, as like it's an expression that sometimes it's hard to create the distance between myself
Mm-hmm.
and this as a process.
Exactly. That's why in the Buddha we talk about it that is what is reborn is the woeful state of suffering, and all of that stuff comes together as a package. The grasping, the clinging, the four modes of clinging, uh, becoming and being born into the hell world or an unwholesome state that is suffering. Bang, 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 just like that.
Yeah, and then
Only
naturally,
that's slower. The bang 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 is way too slow. It happens bang bang bang.
yeah, it's like less than a second, um,
Mm-hmm.
and that leads to the aging and death of that, which is inherently dukkha. Just
It's inherent. Once you're born in that woeful state, that's a painful state. It gets old in a hurry, and it makes everything sick.
and it's interesting because even though they're woeful, if they're identified with, it's still protected. In my experience, even this, say, depression, it arises and it's identified with, and the process of it, it's like self-protective. Like the for it to go
That
away even is
that's
painful.
exactly right. In fact, depression would then be the Ashura. That would be being born into the woeful state of I'm not ready for this.
I'm not ready to cast away dukkha or to
Mm-hmm.
proceed on the path.
Well, I'm not ready to go out on and go out on the town. I'm not ready to go have a ball. I'm not ready to go play in my life.
Exactly. Yeah, this is
That's
something.
dangerous.
This is actually a common theme with me. I'm not ready to be happy in a way. Like I'm not, like I can see I could let go of that. Like but it's it feels safe. It feels safe to be identified with something that's been here for so long.
Exactly so. Wow, that's so insightful. Thank you for saying it that way. That's exactly correct. But now you're beginning to wake up to not only does that feel safe and secure because it's comfortable and old and familiar, it's also dangerous.
Yes, I that's that's the the reason that will peel off the clinging onto that is seeing the danger, and
Have
until
to
that
see the danger.
until it's seen, it's almost like you can put it off indefinitely, right?
That's exactly the ignorance. The ignorance is that we cannot see the danger in dangerous things. Because once we can see the danger, we can plot our escape.
And what? So that makes the connection. So when it arises, um, it'll be it's a good point to see. Okay, how is this a dangerous to, to to investigate and see? Because I hear when you say to cast it away, and that's good, and I agree. But there's also, well, maybe I haven't seen the danger because there's a reason it keeps coming up. And so it seems like part of it is casting it off or abandoning it. And another part is looking at it and seeing the danger there.
But again, I hear what you're saying, I think has to do with over a long period of time.
Okay.
And what we want to do is always bring this back to this present moment. That paticca samuppada doesn't happen over a period of time. It happens like that.
Okay.
And
So
we have to catch it in that sequence. So anytime that you can see this thought is unwholesome, then you can cast this thought out.
Okay.
That's the way that we begin to do it, is to see this thought is dangerous, this thought is unwholesome. And we do it by having these flags planted and of called them the hindrances, in the sense of thoughts of the past, thoughts of the future, thoughts of wanting things. And in fact, if you want something and you recognize that you want it and you don't have it, you can see immediately the danger of the dukkha that exists in not getting what you want. Therefore, well, I don't want anything right now. I can be relaxed and comfortable right now. I don't have to have that girl or that motorcycle or that job or that new laptop. I can be okay right now without any of the things that I can think of that I want.
Okay. Yeah, I think the way I approached it may have been trying to find something outside of it just being dukkha as dangerous. I guess I haven't.
The only thing that's dangerous is this unwholesome thought.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes it just doesn't strike that this is a dangerous thing because it's just so common. But
You've had a lot of them.
Yeah,
And so
the
we
fact
can't
that
see
it
the danger.
exists, the fact it exists is already enough to point out, oh, this is a bad, this is a dangerous object to indulge in. Okay.
So when we have thoughts of, I like this, I want that, or if we have thoughts of, I don't like that, I want to get rid of it, then those two kinds of thoughts are hindrances. They're also critical thoughts. So we can think of as unwholesome thoughts or dangerous thoughts, or thoughts that are critical. And yet our whole society is built upon critical thinking. This is good, but that's better. And this one's even better than that. And our whole life is that way, of judging which is good, which is better, which is good, which is bad. And that a much more wholesome way is that everything is okay. Everything is fine right now. I don't have to think about this being good and that being bad, and therefore I want the good and I want to get rid of the bad. But rather that everything's okay right now. Why should I worry about what's good and what's bad? Everything's all right. So we call of it in the sense of nurturing. A really good example of that is when a baby is born. The baby, brand new baby, mom bonds with it, has very, very high levels of oxycodone in her system, and they call that the bonding chemical, and she has that for a long time, years after the child is born. Everything the child does is beautiful. We nurture that child. Even the first dump the child takes, great big turd after 3 or 4 days, and everybody's very happy. But what happens later? Let's say that kid's 15 years old now and he takes a big dump on turd right there on the kitchen floor. They're not going to be so nurturing now. They're going to be really critical.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So we have we go through a process as a very young child of going out of a nurturing environment into a critical environment. That mom no longer is going to be nurturing with us. Now she wants some payback. I fed you a bottle. Now it's time for you to clean up your room. Now it's time for you to put down your cell phone and do your homework. Now is the time to learn your ABCs, do your homework, do your math, okay? And so we teach our children to be critical. And the children start doing that ignorantly. Yes, Mom, I'll do what you tell me to do. I don't know why, but I do know that if I don't do it, I'm going to get fussed at and yelled at. and so I do it. So the child becomes an animal. That's that willful, and then we get into those animal states when we're adults, because they're very easy to get into. We've gotten into the habit of becoming an animal, of just doing what we're told to do, to go along to get along, that we don't really think through each moment, and we wind up in suffering often.
It's the path of least resistance. It's just
We
conditioning.
take the path of least resistance, exactly, not recognizing that path of least resistance is actually the highway to hell.
Okay.
An easy way out can get really dangerous.
Yeah, I assume that's why, right application, right effort is like, it does take effort, right? It's not, this is reconditioning, but it has to be guided with right view. So, but there is this like, it almost feels like you're going against, you're going perpendicular to the conditioned pattern. Like what it wants to do and what practice is saying are in two separate directions. And yeah, it seems just effort until you get used to that. Okay. Yeah, this makes sense.
Okay, so now we've completed the circle. We've gone from Vedana to Tanha, from Tanha to Upadana. From Upadana, that's when we have the Bhava and the Jati, which is the becoming and being born into that woeful state. When we take on those four modes of clinging, that is Bhava and Jati. In fact, you can see that there's a relationship between Bhava and Tanha, as well as the relationship, as opposed to that, would be the Upadana and the Jati. So as we begin to reach towards something, that's the becoming of the self. And once we grab hold of it and take it, and we're actually now being reborn into that woeful state.
Yeah,
so we're becoming, and then we become, and all of that happens just in a split second. And that woeful state then is a state of dukkha. It gets old in a hurry.
It is really quite, I don't know if shocking is the right word, but surprising that this is rebirth in a way. Like the selves that I am now, they're changing, and they're being born and they're dying. Yeah, it really like, I think, because a lot of times the rebirth process is seen as this cross lifetime activity, sort of like the assumption that after this life I'll be reborn into this, and that it stops there.
But look how delicious that belief is.
Yeah, sure.
It's a really delicious belief. Oh, I'll live forever. Oh, that means that I'll be forgiven of all of these sins, or whatnot, right? So
it's happening now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we fail to realize that being reborn again over and over again into these woeful states happens moment by moment. So when we have that delicious belief that let's talk about it in the sense of reincarnation. And that the Buddhist teaching of rebirth is not the same as the Hindu reincarnation. And yet most Western Buddhists, they don't know the difference between rebirth and reincarnation. That in fact, the actual teaching of rebirth is to help people come out of their belief in reincarnation, and yet most Western Buddhists don't know the difference, and because of that, they see rebirth and reincarnation as the same thing.
Okay, yeah. Okay, we had a discussion on this at one point.
Okay, on this point before, that the point about the rebirth then is that, wait a minute, the Buddha teaches there is no self. If there is no self, then there's no self to be reborn, which means that whatever it is reborn to take over the inheritance of the karma that was left is not me. If it's not me, why should I give a flying rip? The me not only didn't die when when the body broke up, but the me dies dozens of times a day.
Yeah, it seems people both, they want no self and they want self, and they want it's like it's kind of interesting how that can even be a logical
Mm-hmm.
conclusion.
Well, you can also see the danger in that. There is danger in the belief that that after the body breaks up, there will be something of me being reborn. If people have that belief, then what it will lead to is that, oh, that takes the pressure of the present moment, the immediacy out of it. Oh, I've got lifetimes and lifetimes to become a Buddha. Why should I bother to do it right now? And along with that, oh, it must be really, really hard to get anywhere. Therefore, I should make some merit for a long time. And after I get enough merit, then the job of becoming a Buddha will be a whole lot easier. And I'm willing to wait. Okay. And then another danger would be those. So this group that we're talking about in the beginning Buddhist, even the nations, Buddhist countries, will be full of people who don't want to practice according to the Buddha because they have this silly belief that they can wait, that they can make some merit now. And there's an awful lot of shyster monks that'll say, okay, I'll tell you what, if you donate a whole bunch of money to the bank, if you buy me an airplane, a jet plane, I can fly all over the place delivering the gospel, then thou shalt be saved.
Mm.
So that whole idea of you pay now to get a reward later, that's again being nothing but a dumb animal. The dumb animal is the one who believes in rebirth. Oh, I'll get my reward, I'll get my freedom, I'll get my Buddhahood later. And so we can see that mistake in the sense of even if the person doesn't believe in rebirth that way, they still have the concept that it is me, and therefore, if I practice hard enough, I can become a Buddha in this very life, is the next kind of delusional sense. And that this is actually much more of an atheistic point of view. And I define it, the atheist is technically an annihilationist. And this is what we mean. Upon the breakup of the body, the existing self is annihilated, right? Therefore, between now and the time I die, I can become a Buddha, right?
Yes.
That's not, again, the teachings of the Buddha. There is no self to be annihilated upon the breakup of the death. The unenlightened self can die right now, and then there is no self. And now there is Buddha right now. And that Buddha will last until the next unwholesome thought comes up that generates a self.
Yeah, it's interesting how those assumptions will dictate the trajectory of someone's practice and attention, where it's a self-based becoming or bhava as a practice, as opposed to actually a deconstructing of this
I
whole
know, isn't that
kind of.
amazing? Even the Zen folks know that. When the Zen master will say, hey man, you're already enlightened. Just sit there and enjoy it. Just sit. Just zazen. You're already enlightened. You don't have to gain anything. Just enjoy what you've got right now.
It's unpalatable to think, but it's but they're suffering here still. They're still suffering.
Well, throw it out. Catch it. Grab it by
Sure.
the tail, paint it red, and throw it out. Aha, I see you, unwholesome thought.
Mm.
And come back to a state of joy. Come back to a state of pleasure. Come back to a state of homeostasis. Uh, many, uh, this moment well lived.
Mm. Wonderful. Well.
You can. Right. So that's the whole teaching of Paticca Samuppada, is to get out of our future-oriented mentality and come to right now.
And everything everything in experience will lie on one of these 12 points, right? 12, yeah. Like everything that can be experienced, so all of the aggregates, so anything that you notice will lie at some point in this
Yes.
cycle.
Actually, this is why the five aggregates are a very, very excellent introduction to Paticca Samuppada, because all five of those aggregates are there in the Paticca Samuppada.
Yeah, I see that.
Okay. The Sankara of the body, the Sankara of speech, the Sankara of emotions are already there. Okay, so the feelings, the body, perception, consciousness, and the Sankara of our memories and all of that, none of those things are self. Well, if none of those things are self, then where does the self come from? The answer to that would be process or sequence of events. Another way of looking at it can be thought of as the chariot, in the sense of there is a realm of science called general systems theory. Have you ever heard of general systems
Yes.
theory? Okay. One of the qualities of it is open and closed systems. And one of the quality of a system is that a system is greater than the sum of the parts. So we can say it like this, that we'll use the modern day automobile. An automobile is a collection of parts. That if you took that car apart and put the motor over there, the wheels over there, the tires over there, the back seats over there, the front seat over there, the steering wheel is down the block, all of the parts are scattered all over the yard, then that car is not a car. It's car parts. It's only when all of those parts together come together in the correct order and in the correct arrangement is it a car. For instance, if you put the wheels on top of it and put the motor under the chassis, that's not going to be much of a car. You got to put it together correctly. But when you do put together correctly, and the system now is a functioning system, there is a whole that is greater than those sum of the parts for a moment. What is that in the car? Is transportation. What is it for the human being? It's the self. The self is greater than the actual sum of the parts. But when you look at each individual part, there's no self there, which means that the self is very, very transitory and very highly dependent upon a whole lot of stuff. And when any of those or all of those things are missing, then where is the self? The magical thinking is the self is still there. Oh no, the self is gone when the functionality is gone. When there's no body, when there's no mind, when there's no feelings, then where is the possibility of a self to arise?
Yeah, it seems straightforward.
It's so logically, I don't understand why they don't just teach it in school.
There'd be some problems with that in the West, but I
Yeah,
agree.
there would be, wouldn't there? Not against just the Christians be against it, the capitalists would be against it, the government officials would be against it, the teachers would be against it. Because once the students understand Paticca Samuppada, they say, okay, teacher, it was really nice knowing you. Bye-bye. I'm out of here. The whole society, in a way, would fall apart.
Exactly.
If people really knew what was going on. Our society is based upon a pack of lies, magical thinking.
Well, they
Why?
think. Sorry, I was going to say they think you're the one with magical thinking, which is ironic.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to point that out, since it seems as if this discussion is really looking at what's here, and the rejection of this is fairly common as just a principle of clinging.
Exactly. And the reason for that is the basic point is that right now is not good enough.
Mm.
The whole society is built upon this is not good enough, it could be better. This moment is not good enough, it could be better. Let's work on it and improve it. Which means that everything is dissatisfying. Everything is dukkha. And so it really is kind of a magical thinking when you just say, everything is already okay. I don't have to do anything to fix anything. There's nothing broken here. And I can relax.
Well, this has been a fruitful
Yeah.
conversation, Dhammarato.
Pardon?
I said this has been a fruitful conversation, Dhammarato.
I'm really glad that you're getting something out of it. I've really enjoyed it also.
Mm. It's a bit late here, but until we meet again, I'll be quite vigilant with the tending of this cycle of origination. I think it's
It was really good to see you again. I very much enjoyed it. I hope to see you again soon.
yeah, you as well. I'm sure it will be sooner than last time.
Julian, enjoy your moment.
You too. Blessings. Thank you.